Welcome to Becoming Invaluable. I'm Terry Lyles, Steve Bowen, author with me. He's co-author, I'm co-author. We're both because sometimes I fly, he flies. That's why I have a pilot and a co-pilot. So it depends on who has control of the stick. So we're going to navigate that today, which is a part of our navigation in the subtitle. So Steve, welcome back to another show. We have a special guest, Jim Gans, and we're going to get into kind of his number and what he's about. But Steve, I want you to introduce him. So Jim, welcome to the show and glad to have you.
Thank you.
Well, Terry, thank you. And Jim, thank you for joining us today. We're going to have a little bit of fun and have some conversation. And for all of those people out there that don't know you, my introduction is really, you're known as 95. So from here on in life, you're 95. And everybody out there, we just want you to know that that's the page number that Jim is on in the book.
Correct.
And we give everybody that agreed to do the spotlight and a podcast with us, they get a tattoo and they put it on their right arm and they wear it for life. So
it could be a temp or a permanent. We'll let you decide, but you're still 95, buddy.
Well, nobody told me that when you originally talked to me, a permanent tattoo.
Yeah, well, we didn't want to scare you off until it's printed. Now it's done. So now you're over. It's printed, it's done.
Well, look, first of all, I just want to say, Jim, I'm so happy to have you here with us today.
Yes.
For all of you out there, I've known Jim for quite some time. I don't even know how many years, Jim. At least 31 or 2 years, I think. Maybe another year or two on top of that. We used to be neighbors in St. Louis, and I'm so excited to have Jim here because I watched him build his business, and he really built something that was pretty small into something that's pretty awesome today. And but I think, aren't you retired now, Jim?
I am retired. I officially retired January 1st. Although I still own a portion of the business, and I'm still I was just my son is the one who took over, and I was on the phone with him for a little over an hour, about an hour and a half ago. So still a little involved.
Yeah. Well, tell everybody about a little bit about your journey, in both business and life, because this is about, in our book, Becoming Invaluable. This is about, how do you throughout life continuously work at becoming invaluable? And what does that mean? And I just, give some of your background and how you think about that.
So I think becoming invaluable, it's hard it's hard for me to look at myself and say I've been invaluable. It's interesting when I read the book because it kind of was a little, made me be a little introspective about, was I invaluable? Because from my point of view, I never really felt it was me that made my business successful. I always felt like it was my people. I had great people. I was blessed to have great people that were with me for many, many years and for a long time. And I was able to take some of those people and turn their careers into something that they never thought would happen for them as well. So as that was happening, I really believe that, was I invaluable? I don't know if I was invaluable or not. I never stopped to think about it because I was working. I think it was also interesting what you just said, Steve, about the life. You look, and I'm kind of in a point where I'm looking back at these things, but I look at the life that it took to be successful, and there's kind of two parts to that. And I think there's the part of your life that you worked and you stayed positive and you stayed focused and you tried to get the things done that you need to get done, and then there's your personal life. And I do want to say this, my spouse, my wife, Tracy, was extremely supportive of my business, was extremely supportive of what I was doing. And I think if you don't have that in life, that working hard and having that dedication and doing what it takes to be successful, if that piece isn't there, you're going to have a rough time. It's just difficult to make that all work.
No.
So
Jim, I couldn't agree more with that because as you know, my wife Deb was very involved in the business in Main Point. She did the books for the first 2 years. I think didn't you and Tracy meet through the business or around the?
Yeah, we did. We met. She was a salesperson for me, and we met now it'll be almost 40 years ago. And so we met. She understood the business, but there was a lot from that point of view moving forward that she learned as I learned, and she was always really, really supportive of me. One of the things that I was required to do I wasn't required to do. It was one of the things that I did in order to make this all work. I had to work every Saturday, so I was working 6 days a week for 20 something years, and she never complained about it, and she was always really supportive of it.
Yeah, that's really powerful, because part of the adapting or adaptation, as we write about in the chapter you're in, is about that. It's like, how do you negotiate that process? Like, what does that really look like?
Yeah, I think one of the things that as I said, I was always able to surround myself with really good people. I think caring about your people at a level that is beyond you work for me. I actually never used that term, that you worked for me. It was you work with me, we work together. Right. And I always had the advantage of finding people who were willing to work hard, that wanted to be successful, and I was able to help them move forward in finding that success.
Yes. And that's really important, whether it's your spouse, whether it's, a coworker, a leader, a banker, whatever that might be. I think that adaptation, quality, and speed of getting things done is really, really important. So I think that's a really cool part of it. And I think all of us could say, listen, whatever we think our successes are, we didn't do it alone.
Right.
Exactly. We had a lot of good people, from spouses to kids to coworkers to all kinds of interesting people that make us who we are. And that's our give back in this chapter.
Terry, it's funny you say that about your kids, and I've said I'm retiring, and my son is taking over. It's taken over. And when he first started taking over, I couldn't believe the things that were coming out of his mouth and the things that he knew and how to deal and talk to people. And I said to him, I said, Tyler, where are you getting this from? How do you know these things? And he said, I sat in the car. I can't tell you how many hours of my life growing up listening to you talk to people. And he goes, I guess I didn't really realize it, but I was absorbing all that, whether I knew it or not. And I was like, geez, I was always kind of feeling bad. You're sitting here listening to me talk to to the people I work with. And, but in the end, it really worked out well, because he was absorbing it. So when you say your family is part of that whole thing, that I agree with that completely.
It's osmosis. We learn by absorption. It's like you hear enough conversation, you're like, I think I get what he's trying to say. I'm gonna. That's a really good one. I'm gonna use that one.
Yeah. So that's actually been an advantage as well.
That's cool. That's cool.
So I don't know if go ahead.
Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, we got you.
All right, I'm back. I've never had this happen before, ever, and my computer just shut down, literally.
Well, we just kept talking like you were still here, so we didn't talk about you. We just talked with you. So
what do we talk about? You got to adapt, right? You got to
adapt. Go to the iPhone, baby. Go to the iPhone.
There you go.
So I'm doing the best I can with that, and it should be fine. So anyway, keep going, guys.
All right. So I didn't go into my background a lot, but I mean, the way I got into the business I'm in, my father was in this business. My father was a serial entrepreneur. He went from business to business to business. He stumbled upon the business we're in now completely by accident. And I was able, I bought him out in 1995 and was able to grow our business to a much larger level. We were franchised. We owned, my brother and I had bought some franchises. My father had some. We merged those together, bought my father out. And then about 10 years, maybe not even 10 years later, we bought the franchisor and became the franchisor for the company. And we're able to grow it in some different ways. Some of the things I talk about, the people that I'm most proud of, I was able to take managers of mine and turn them into franchisees, teach them, I knew they knew the business, and they could sell, and they could deliver the product, but teaching them how to be an entrepreneur, and teaching them how to own a business. And when I look back on my career, I guess my son is the one I'm the most proud of in business. I'm very proud of my daughter too. She's an elementary school teacher and she's amazing. But in business, but these people that I was able to help turn into entrepreneurs and teach them how to run a business, and they've continued on to be very, very successful in their lives. And when I look back, probably that's the thing I'm the most proud of, was the ability to just help them go to a different level they never even thought of.
Yeah,
That's awesome. That's an interesting perspective, Jim. I'm sitting here thinking about it. You don't even know about this latest and greatest news, but the company that I built and sold has now gone through 2 CEOs since I exited, and they hired a guy now from internal who literally started with the company as a consultant, has been with the business for 12 years, and worked his way all the way up to being the top salesperson, but not just the top salesperson, the top salesperson in the entire history of the company. Outdid any numbers I ever did. He sold he sold $53 million last year, and he was personally, that's his team in private equity, and he was personally responsible for $28 million.
That is fantastic.
It just blows away any other number. I don't think anybody's more than half of that in the history. So that I know that he's not my son, but I'm really proud of the fact that he's now taking over as CEO.
Yeah. No, I think there's no question that, you if you can help people be better, help people go somewhere they never thought of, it's an amazing feeling. And even as you're, all the years, that's why I say you kind of look back at it and you get a little introspective when you retire. I don't know that I appreciated it as I was doing it as much, or as I was helping these people as much. But when I look back, I know that it made a difference in their lives. And I was fortunate enough on my last day of work. We did Zoom meetings. We became a completely remote company, total transition through COVID from brick and mortar in 18 locations to 100% remote. Made that conversion. That's a whole nother story, but made that conversion very quickly. So we started having sales meetings, national sales meetings on Zoom every week. Prior to that, I had salespeople that had worked for me for many, many years who I never met. They'd come and go. They worked in a physical, in a brick and mortar location. I didn't happen to get to that location at the time when they were there. But through the remote situation, was able to have a national sales meeting with all of our salespeople and really get to know them. Anyway, on my last day, I had prepared a speech. I'm retiring, and thank you to everybody. I had like a 5-page speech that I was going to give to everybody. And I log into the meeting, and I don't even know if I shared this with you, Steve. I log into the meeting, and my son Tyler goes, we're not having our regular meeting. And he had a video of all my managers who were on the meeting saying something nice things about it. It was, really touching. Had my wife, my daughter, my daughter-in-law, had people from all through the company. And then he just said some, I have to admit, it was emotional. Said some just really beautiful things about his opportunity and us working together and what that had meant to him. So you look back and it's just amazing, all the people whose lives you've touched, and the fact that I even had the chance for them to share that with me, completely unexpected.
Well,
was really touching.
That's invaluableness. So you started out talking about, I'm not really sure. I didn't really think about becoming invaluable, and you were introspective. It's because you were just like on the grind every day, like we all are. But when you hear from your team members and your family that Dad, my boss, my influencer, my board member changed my life, that is invaluable. You know what I mean? So you didn't need a speech. They told your speech for you. They wrote your epitaph from the business, and now you can start living in another entropy. That's a beautiful thing.
Yeah, it was completely unexpected, and it was really touching. And I, you summarized it very well. You're exactly right. So,
and we love the title "Becoming" because it's active and present.
That's
So
interesting.
now you got to figure out how you're going to become invaluable in the next phase of your life. And Steve and I talked a lot about this when we wrote the book. Like, there's phases of life. You know, you grow up, you go to school, you go to college, you start a work life, whatever that is, and then you transition through that, hopefully, and then you go, now what? And, you know, 2/3 of people that retire that don't have a purpose die within 5 years. You know what I mean? I mean, it's a scary thing. I mean, you have to continuously become invaluable in another set. So that's the adaptation.
That's really, I can appreciate exactly what you're saying, because it was a big fear about retiring. You know, you've worked hard, you've been driven, you've been focused, and all of a sudden, and for me it was really kind of all, so it ended, and that was it. I did talk to somebody, because they were like, everybody kept saying to me, what are you going to do? What are you going to do? And I'm like, well, I'm not really sure what I'm going to do. Well, there's no way you're not going to work. And I'm like, well, I don't know. I've never not worked. I've never not worked since I was, 16 years old, including summers, vacations, spring breaks, holidays, whatever. I've always worked. And then somebody did give me a piece of advice, which I appreciated. They said, everyone keeps asking you, what are you going to do when you retire? And you're kind of shrugging your shoulders, right? And I said, yeah. They said, she said to me, she goes, I give you permission to take a year to decide what you're going to do,
Yes.
and not answer that question for anybody. And I have to say that gave me a little bit of peace of mind, because I was freaking out that I didn't have an answer.
Well, Jim, I relate to what you're saying so much, because for me, I've had a really interesting transitional period. It hasn't just been a year for me. It's actually probably taken me 3, almost 4 years to get to a place where, like, I'm like, okay with this retired life. But I wrote a book, right, with Terry. Yep. We had a lot of fun doing it. This became my attempt to give back, right, for all the great things and blessings I've had in life. And I have one other thing that I'm going to work on that's going to keep me busy selling something. And now it seems that Main Point is circling around and asking me for some, to do some training and that kind of thing. And I have to tell you, Jim, it's kind of fun going back and doing that. Right now, I don't have any responsibilities, but I just do training.
There's no responsibility, no accountability. That's why we love training. We show in, we hit it, quit it, we're out. Like, y'all do it. Get your management team to figure it out.
Yeah.
That's great. Well, I haven't gotten that far yet, because I don't know. And you actually, because you were through COVID, you had some of that going on where everything was shutting down. So that had to even be more of a challenge.
Yeah. Well, I don't know, Jim.
Yeah, he would have been out.
What you did with
that.
Right.
Yeah. I guess technically I sold right before that, but I was still CEO. And so then they asked me to hang around and help get through that. But, Jim, what you did with your business was amazing. And I actually learned from you. You should talk a little bit more about that, because I couldn't believe it, what he told me he had done with this team. Because this is an example of how you work with the people, I think, and how you get these personalities all coming together and do amazing things. And I'll say the rest of what I want to say after you maybe share a little bit more about that, because it was pretty amazing.
So I do remember our conversation well. And my business was, it was a little tiny thing compared to what your business was. But what we did is, when COVID hit, truthfully, I'm like, well, we're finished. We're in the educational training business, and students came to us, and we had 18 brick and mortar locations, and COVID hits, and I'm like, well, we had to shut the doors. Obviously, nobody knew what was going on, and everyone was afraid for any group gatherings. We certainly weren't going to have classes, and so we put together. I don't even know what made us think of this. My son and I put together teams to handle different parts of our business. And so we put together a technology team. We had talked about doing online training earlier. My son Tyler had brought it up a few years earlier in our strategic planning meeting. And we had put it off for a few years, and we're going to set money aside and spend 6 months researching it, another 6 months testing it, and then introduce it maybe from when we talked about it, like a year and a half to 2 years later. Well, what happened is we closed the doors on March 23rd, 2020, and decided, well, we need to figure something out. So we put a technology team together. We got our technology people, and we said, we need to figure out how to have all these people in all these different cities go to a class with a specific instructor who might be in a different city and who might are also in different programs, and get them into the right Zoom meeting with the right instructor. And this is actually a weird one. One of the biggest challenges of this was the time zones, because I could be a student in Oklahoma. My instructor is in Philadelphia, and then there's five people from Oregon and people from Florida. So getting all those times, that was one of their biggest challenges, our technology people. Anyway, so their job was to coordinate that. We told them that's what we needed. Go do it. We put together how we were going to teach out our current students, and we put a logistics team together and told them to go do it. My assistant, who had also done marketing for us, we told her to go put a customer care department together, because we never had a customer service department because we had all these individual locations. So go put a national customer service department together. And she says to me, well, what do you want me to do? And I said, Jeannie, go figure it out. You're smart. You've always been able to figure out anything I put in front of you. Go. And so she went away and did it. And then we got all of our salespeople together and told them, we have to figure out how we're going to sell this online. We took 7 of our top salespeople and managers, and we said, you guys go out, each one of you. I don't want you talking to each other. Do not talk to each other. I don't want you sharing ideas. Each of you go out and figure out how to present this and how to sell it. Then we're going to meet again. That was actually on a Sunday. We're going to meet again next Sunday, and we're going to talk about what everybody did and then try to perfect it and then do it again. So they all go out, and we come back the next week, and they, this one tried this one tried this one tried that. We shared ideas, then did it again for the next week. And so we were completely shut down for 4 weeks before we were able to get our current students back into classes, taking those classes. Our salespeople figured that out on their own. Our technology person figured it out on her own. Our customer service person figured it out on her own and decided she was 7 days a week, 15 hours a day. She's answering a customer service number as she's trying to hire people and figure this out herself. By that was March 23rd. I remember it well. By the middle of May, our sales were back up to the levels they had been before. We were teaching all of our students that had been out there in our brick and mortar locations, and we continued to grow from there, and then started exceeding our sales from what we had ever done brick and mortar moving forward. So let me just say one other thing. It was an amazing story. Sorry. It was an amazing story of people that worked hard, and I left this part of it out. So we had let our people go when we thought we were closing down. We're like, we can't pay all these employees because we don't even have a business going right now. So we're like, we need to figure out how we're going to keep everybody. And so every week, as we would develop what we were doing, we were hiring more and more and more people back. The salespeople all could start working and getting commissions again. We hire all these customer care people. So what happened, and this is probably what was the most amazing thing to me, my salespeople, my content team people, the technology people, all the people Tyler and I put together on each of these meetings, their biggest concern wasn't how much money are we making, what's our commission, what are we doing? It was, how many people do we bring back this week? How many people do we bring back this week? And that was all anybody cared about until we got everybody back by maybe the middle of May. And it was amazing to watch just the caring of everybody. Wow. And that's what it motivated them to. Everybody was suffering at that time, as you recall. Yeah. Nobody knew. Yeah. There was all this uncertainty, and to be able to join together and make sure, it was a couple hundred people with part-time people, all were back working. It was really amazing to watch.
Wow. Well, Jim, I remember the story so well. I just want everybody to be connected with the fact that you did the transition in 4 weeks. Right. And then in addition to that, you were back at the business level you were at previous to COVID by mid-May, 8 weeks later, which is just phenomenal. So in somewhere in the middle of that April, May timeframe, because I know it was in April, Jim, because I talked to you and I remember talking about this and I said, well, excuse my language, shit, if Jim could do this, I can do this at Main Point. So
exactly.
I gave everybody on May 1st, or excuse me, on maybe it was May, but I gave everybody a target. I said, okay, on May 1st, you have 30 days. By June 1st, we're operating our business completely remotely with our existing client base because they're going to come back first, and then we're going to figure out the rest of it. And while we had to let some people go, we did not pull off the feat that you pulled off, Jim. It took us literally until 2023 to exceed our pre-COVID 2019 numbers. And so it was a big recovery. But man, without that, watching you do that and talking about it and how you did it with the people, I did the same thing. I created a few teams and I said, go figure, I don't know how you're going to do it. Go figure it out.
And that is that adaptability part that we tried to highlight. And that's why we wanted you in this chapter, Jim, because, you know, your story is very powerful and not everybody fared that well through COVID. I mean, there were businesses that are lost forever, family-owned businesses, been around for 100 years, that just couldn't survive because they just didn't have the fabric and those kind of resources. And, you know, it was really an BC AD kind of moment in our lifetime, COVID, you know, because look at us now. We're all on a Zoom call. I didn't even know what Zoom was before COVID. You know what I mean? We should have all invested in Zoom. We didn't know it existed. You know, so it's how do we adapt, and how quickly can we adapt? How healthily can we adapt to scenarios?
I want to say one other thing about during this period of time. So my son, and I don't want to, I want to, this was also a great situation for he and I, because he was my son coming into the business at third generation. And what this, he was as much a part of this as I was. If not, he truly was working 7 days a week, 15 hours a day. We were doing everything we could, but he and I kind of recreated the business together, and it gave him a sense of ownership that he eventually probably would have had, but it happened very quickly because we took a reinvented product and together made it work. And so all of a sudden he wasn't the son coming into his father's business, and he had proved himself in sales. He had proved himself in management. He had proved himself everywhere. But this put his leadership and his ability at a whole nother level. And is one of the reasons I also believe he was able to take over for me, and I was able to retire when I was able to retire. It not only gave him a sense of self-confidence, but it gave everybody a sense of confidence in his ability.
I'll bet.
It made a huge difference.
Yeah.
And he was a absolute huge part of this entire process. This wasn't me.
Well, one of the phrases I've always liked is, if you're going to be a leader, you need people to follow you. And so what it created was an opportunity for the people to start following him, and not just, not you, I don't mean it in the wrong way, not just you, but now they were following you and him. And that's just a phenomenal transition in and of itself. And then I can just imagine over these last few years, all the leadership and management knowledge and skill sets you've been communicating with him about over those years. And it takes I have the pleasure of knowing Tyler as well here for everybody. I know Jim's whole family very well, but it takes an ability to communicate with people. And this is one of the things that we like to say. It's not just in business. You can be invaluable if you're invaluable to one person, one other person that you make a difference in their life. You can be invaluable. You're becoming invaluable to that person, right? And that's what I like to think of a lot. And I think that happens in our personal lives more than we realize and give ourselves credit for.
Right.
It's interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. there's no question this experience with him put him made my ability to retire and this transition much easier. I have total confidence in him. I think he's a phenomenal leader. He and I talk about that a lot. There was one of the things in your book that I absolutely loved, and it was leaders. It reminded me of critical thinking. Leaders aren't solving problems; they're teaching people how to solve problems. I'm not quoting it exactly, but it reminded me of critical thinking in school. I mean, teaching somebody critical thinking as opposed to memorize a bunch of ideas. And when you talked about leadership in your book, you talked about that, and I'm like, yeah, that really rings strong. It rings true to me. It makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. So how, as we start wrapping up, I mean, how do people find out about now your son's business? Like we'll keep the trilogy going. So now that there's something there, how do people find you that want your services? And we want to promote that because your story is phenomenal. We appreciate you being a part of our spotlight in the book.
So to find us online, we're at jcasablancas.com. It gives a history of our company and what we do, and the education that we provide is teaching people about modeling, acting, self-improvement, and content development. That's the core of what we do. And so if they go to that website, they can find out about us.
That's great.
I think it's also worth mentioning here, Jim, the business you built and how you turned this into really, I like to think of your business today as all those things, but you also help people adapt into a new culture. Mm-hmm. And coming from a foreign country into the United States, it's different, right? And you help them with that. All the people's lives that your business, that John Casablancas has touched over the years is, must be just a tremendous feeling that when you look out and think of what some of the people that have gone through your program have gone on to do.
It's amazing you say that. So we have the success stories of people that have starred in movies and television shows and supermodels and people that have done all kinds of work all over the world in those fields. But truthfully, when I have sales meetings and I've talked to our instructors, and we've always felt this way, all the people who come to us who lack self-confidence, who aren't sure of themselves, who don't know how to present themselves, we teach people how to do an elevator pitch in all of our programs. All of those people who have never become a famous actor, model, content person, whatever it is, but that have gained the self-confidence to get into college or to get that next promotion or to get a job. And we don't even know that we have letters from parents and letters from people that tell us that, but all the thousands of people over my career that I don't even know where it went and how it impacted them. It is something that is really powerful and something that I'm really proud of. I look back and I know we made a difference in all these people's lives.
And that is becoming invaluable. I mean, and you helped other people. That's why Steve and I, it took us a long time to come up with the title because we had a working title. It wasn't really this, but you start there. It's like any content. You have to have a focus. You start somewhere, but then as we kept talking about it, it really became kind of a true north for what he and I talked all this time about. And like you said, for the lives you impact and the lives that all of us impact, we'll never really truly know, and not that we need to, but having the belief system that we're impacting people's lives right now is worth it, whatever that is. There's a value to that.
And your book is, I have to tell you, I gave it to my son and I'm like, you need to read this. This is nice. There's there's great stuff in there. Really good.
Well, we'll interview him to get the other side of the story.
I finally got that old guy out of here.
That might be a
Awesome.
really fun podcast. to do,
It would
Terry.
be. It would be. You can interview my son. I'm sure you'd hear a very different story. So whatever. It is what it is.
I'm calling Tyler right after we conclude. this.
Exactly. We're gonna schedule him for the next one.
Yeah, he's way more interesting than me.
Now, Steve, any final thoughts? We're gonna wrap up here, but any
Well,
final-
I just want to say this is what I wanted to really bring out. So, think about it, Jim. You're transitioning into this thing we all call retirement. I don't really think of it as retirement. It's this different phase of life. But what you have is you have that beautiful magic carpet that's floating you in the air, knowing you've touched so many people's lives. And that is why we have you in the book. That's why we wanted you on the podcast with us, because it's just an amazing story. It really is. And I know we don't like to think sometimes of our own amazing story, but we like thinking about your amazing story. So thank you so much, Jim, for joining us on this podcast. Terry, I'll let you wrap things up, and we'll go from there.
Yeah, it's great to have you, Jim. You can find us at becominginvaluable.com. It's really easy. You can also find us on all the book platforms, Amazon and others. We've sold out on Amazon a few times. It was kind of fun, actually, to watch it happen. They fell behind. We're like, really? So you're killing me here, but it was all good. So we recovered.
Don't forget.
Yeah.
The audiobook is probably out next week, right?
That's
Our
correct.
audiobook will be out next week on Amazon. And, we look forward to hopefully touching a few more people through that.
We definitely do. So becominginvaluable.com. Jim Gans, thank you for being a part of our book, this show. Blessings to you, your family, your business, Tyler and all the above. Steve, thank you for introducing all of us together. And we'll do something again, probably with Tyler, but we'll do something again. We'll give you a heads up. Okay, so thank you guys for being here. Becominginvaluable.com. Thanks. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. All right. So